Hi, everybody. It is Rebecca Robbins here from Mind Shaper SLP, and I just needed to talk to you about this amazing webinar that I saw this weekend. I'm taking an autism certification course, and the very first little webinar was a talk given by Temple Grandin. If you've never listened to Temple Grandin speak, I encourage you to do so. She's just amazing and just has amazing insights into things that are valuable to teach our kids with autism. And that's one of the things I want to talk to you about today is one of my big takeaways from listening to her talk this weekend. And this is all about the importance of teaching kids work skills and money skills really, really early and at a young age. So she really emphasized how important it was in her success as an adult, the fact that her mother exposed her to lots of chores and responsibilities when she was young. And then she also had earned an allowance and was able to, I think she said that she wanted to buy comic books and something else. I can't remember what the other thing was that she said that she liked to buy, but her allowance was what her mom wouldn't buy those things for her. She had to buy it with her allowance. And she would actually have to go to the store and use her allowance and pay to buy the actual items that she wanted. And she just talked about how valuable that was at a very young age to have that exposure and how helpful it was for her as an adult when she went out into the workforce. So I wanted to talk to you all today about some ways that you can start incorporating teaching your child some work skills very early on in your own home by having your child take on some chores. Now, I can tell you that our kids are way more capable of doing things than we give them credit for. And I know this because when I worked at the Center for Spectrum Services, and we were working with preschool age children, and they would have jobs and responsibilities. Like at lunchtime, they would have to set out the napkins or set out the cups for everybody. And these kids were very capable of learning the responsibility and taking it on. They would clean up their own trays, and it was because we taught them how to do it very specifically, very structured. We taught them. And then we had a system of slowly fading back the prompts and the expectation and the structure that the structure that provided the expectation that this is your job and you are expected to do it every time. And you can do these same things at home. And I have some really simple suggestions of easy chores you can start with if you have a child who is young. Sorry, if you have a child who is young, or if you have a child that needs a high level of support. Or if you have, and I have some other suggestions, if you have an older child or a child that is able to handle a more complex task or is a reader. So let's just dive right into the suggestions. Let's just get to the nitty gritty. Young child, a great chore that you can start teaching your child right away is setting the table. And the way that I would suggest that you do this is get a piece of paper and draw. You can even put out your own plates and your own forks and knives and your own cup and create a placemat that has the shapes of these objects and then you put these placemats on each seat at the table, excuse me, so that when your child is setting the table, they have a visual cue of exactly where each item needs to go. And of course, just like we used to do at the school, you're going to have to explicitly show the child and teach the child the first couple times. They might need more than a couple times of instruction, but you're going to explicitly demonstrate and show the child. What I would do is First, start with a blank piece of paper. You can actually even order these online, but you can make these yourself. Get a piece of paper that's big enough that you can trace the shape of your plates that you use for dinner, and then put the fork and the knife on either side and trace the outline of the fork and the outline of the knife, and then put a cup and trace the bottom of the cup so that when you remove those things, you have the shapes, the basic shapes. And then I would take a picture of the empty placemat. And then you could even go so far, if your child needs this level of support, as to take a picture at each stage that you put the new item on the placemat. So if you have the empty placemat with the big circle for the plate, and the next picture would be the empty placemat with just the plate on it. And then the picture after that would be the placemat with the plate and the fork on it. And then the next picture would be the plate, the fork, and the knife. And then the next picture would be the plate, the fork, the knife, and the cup, so that your child has visual cues of how to place the objects on the placemat. So at first, your child might need a lot of prompts and support to be able to put those objects on the placemats. But once your child is able to, it seems like they're getting the hang of it, that's when you want to start fading back the level of support. And then it's just a matter of putting the placemats on in the spots, and then your child can independently put the objects on the placemats, with the goal of eventually removing the placemat so that your child can set the table with the memory of what the placemats represented, so that they can independently set the table. So setting the table is a great chore to start teaching your child, which leads to an important life skill later on. Another simple chore that you could start working on with your child. I don't know about you guys, but I know I have little garbage cans throughout my house. I have one in my office. I have one in each of our bathrooms. So you can have your child go through the house and get the smaller garbage cans and bring them into the kitchen or wherever you want them to dump it into the bigger garbage can. And their job is just to take once a week, maybe they take the smaller garbage can and they empty it into the bigger garbage can. So it's a really simple task, but it's their responsibility, and it's teaching them that they have to get the thing from one room, go to another room, empty it out, and then return the item back where it belongs. So that is another simple chore you could teach a relatively young child or a child that needs a little more support. The last suggestion I have for you is to teach your child to wash windows or a glass door. And there's a really cool way that you can do this. So, because if you give a child, we use Norwex in our house. I'm not a sponsor for them or anything. So we just use our cloths, but if you, most people use Windex or something like that to clean their windows. But if you give a child, most children, a bottle of Windex, they're going to just sit there and spray in the same spot of the window over and over, rather than spreading out the spray across the window. So a way that you can teach your child to spray in certain spots on the window is you can take a dry erase marker and you make a little circle with the dry erase marker and spread them out in different spots on the window or on the glass door. And you tell the child, spray the dots, and show them that one spray on each dot. And then you teach them to wipe and clean away all the dots and to clean the windows. So you spray the dots. That is a good way to teach the child to disperse this spray on the window so that it's getting all over the window and not just on one tiny little spot. And then the same thing that happens with the placemats the way that I envision it is that the kids kind of keep a picture representation in their brains of these visual cues, which is why they're easier to fade than verbal cues. So they can keep a picture in their mind of what the window looks like with the different dots on it, so that over time you might even be able to say, spray the dots without the dots being there, and the child will spray in the different spots because they can remember when they were spraying the window with the dots on it. So that's another way you can teach, or another chore that you can teach your child at a relatively young age, or a child that needs a higher level of support. So let's move on to some simple chores you can teach your older child, or a child that is able to read or is able to handle a more complex task, or a task that involves a little more. So we all get mail delivery daily. So it would be great if you could have your child be the mail deliverer. So basically their job is to get the mail and to sort it based on who it goes to, and then deliver it throughout the house. So there's a couple of different ways that you could do this. You could have one of those mail, I have one of these in my house where it hangs on the wall and it's got different little baskets that you can put different things in. And then you could just have each basket with the name, like mom, dad, Jimmy, or the names of everybody in the house that could get mail. And then your child who's learning to be the mail deliverer has to sort the mail by names and put them in the right basket for the family member. So you could do it that way, where it's just a simple sorting task right in front of the child. Or you could take it a step farther even and set up little mailboxes outside of bedroom doors, so that the child actually has to go through the house and deliver the mail to, sorry, my phone is on low battery. Every time I go live, my phone's on low battery. So you set up the little mailboxes next to everyone's bedroom door, and then the child actually has to go to each bedroom door to deliver the mail. And this is definitely a great skill that can translate into a future occupation, including a mail carrier, possibly, or sorting in a mailroom. There's lots of jobs that can require sorting, and teaching sorting is a great life skill and also future job skill. Putting away the groceries could be another great chore to teach a child that is a little more capable of something a bigger chore that's a little bit longer, a little more complex. And it's definitely a great life skill to know how to put away the groceries. So your child might need the support at first of some sort of labels on the outside of the cabinet. Or if you don't want them on the outside of your cabinets because you don't like the way they look, you can put them on the inside of the cabinet door so that you only see it when you open the cabinet door. But teach your child that they have to open the cabinet door to see what goes there. So it all depends on what your child is capable of. They might need that support of seeing the picture or the word on the outside of the cabinet. But if they're capable of knowing to open the cabinet door and to look at the different types of foods that are in there as to where the groceries go, then you can also put those visuals on the inside of the cabinet door. So that is just really teaching, again, it's teaching categorization, it's teaching sorting, it's teaching an important life skill for living independently. You have to know how to go grocery shopping and put those groceries away in the right spot when you get home. And it can translate into an occupation or a job skill. If a child works at a grocery store, they have to know how to stock shelves or put things away, or if they work at any sort of store doing inventory, knowing how to put things where they belong on the right shelf is an important job skill. So the sooner that you can start teaching this, the easier it will be to translate into an occupation later on. And we don't want to wait until our child is already out of high school to start working on these things, because it's at that point that we want our child or young adult at that point to actually be getting a job. And Actually, Temple Grandin says that she thinks that the child should start having some sort of a job before they graduate high school, because they really just need the experience and the exposure in the job field to get practice, so that when they are young adults, it isn't their first time out there and their first time learning how to be an employee at a job, and it sets them up for more success. My third suggestion is to teach your older child that's a little more capable laundry. They need to know how to do laundry, and the sooner you start with them, the better they'll be able to be as they get older. So it might be at first, because I understand washing machines and dryers are very expensive, so you don't want to risk them getting broken or anything. But so they might need the supervision at first of doing their laundry. But the goal is you start with as much support as your child needs at first, and then you just slowly over time fade back the level of support until it reaches independence. This isn't a sprint, it's a marathon. So if you start with your child really young and teaching them how to do their laundry, by the time they're 18, it's very possible and most likely that they will be able to do it independently. And what an amazing independent life skill you've just given your child. So there you go. There's some tips of simple chores that you can go ahead, excuse me, and start teaching your child on the spectrum today. And I'd love to hear from you which one of these chores sounds interesting to you. Which one do you think you're going to try with your child? If you have any questions about any of my suggestions, please pop them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you. I love interacting with my audience, so please do comment. And that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye, everybody.